Oh, by the way, if, a traffic violation or a speeding ticket or something along those lines, considering the factor that if it's written incorrectly, you know, it has to be thrown out, dismissed by the court. So my question is, going ahead and indefinitely suspending my driver's license on a failure to appear, while at the same time trying to omit the factor and separate the factor that the court date in question was actually set on the docket for Hanukkah. All right. So my question is, ultimately, how would you have been able to go ahead and know if I showed up or not? Well, simultaneously, you wanted to go ahead and book my court date on a federal holiday. All right. Because it feels like, that citation was used as an anti Semitic fuck you. All right. So now my question is, how you think that there's no Manel claim? I think there's no arbitration or settlement negotiations. Well, meantime, there's been an attempt to, prevent me from being able to, get everything handled with insurance simultaneously. Vehicle taken away, you know, and it's like, hey, so apparently I paid over a decade's worth of insurance, and we're not talking about liability, insurance. I'm talking full coverage. All right. So apparently I paid for full coverage for well over a decade. All right. Which, by the way, that right there, that's an expense of almost $100 a month. So we're talking $100 a month over a 10-year span. I want you to go ahead and do those calculations and tell me, for anybody that's, having to live hand to mouth, I want you to tell me that you'd be able to afford going ahead and, taking as a quote unquote loss or a quote unquote sign of good faith to earn your freedom or, maintain your freedom because somebody wanted to get you locked up and after being racially profiled. Yeah, that right there, that's the type of situation that the ACLU really would want to go ahead and have their attention put to, you know? Because it's like, hey, when it comes to abuses of power, how much more of an abuse of power can you get than indefinitely, going to suspend somebody's driver's license, putting a false claim of them getting driving while intoxicated, while simultaneously not doing a check, when it comes to, a breathalyzer or anything along those lines, while wanting to simultaneously put that accusation, while not wanting to acknowledge that something that could go ahead and prevent, for example, cause potential delusion, paranoia, hysteria, you know, as well as, you know, cognitive dysregulation is a concussion. That would be an excuse for, a alteration of equilibrium, that's not rooted in a cause of, by self inflicted or self induced intoxication. All right. So, that being said, that's a bold assumption that you know how things would have gone in court. Well, simultaneously, ultimately, I'm pretty sure, whether it's an error or an oversight, or wanting to pretend that it's one because of wanting to try to have plausible deniability of, oppression of civil liberties, ultimately pain and suffering, tortious interference, you know, these are big things that you would have to go ahead and explain. And funny thing is, when attempting to go ahead and force arbitration, because of arbitration being a totally different form of deliberation than an actual jury trial or anything along those lines, because of the factor that it's technically deliberating on, the specified guidelines of a contract, with arbitration involving, the first stage being the talking stage. All right. Think about it like dating. You don't know what you're going to get when you're talking. All right. But now here's the thing, there is no time limit on the amount of time that it ends up taking, to talk. But ultimately, an actual agreement needs to get reached. If there's no agreement reached, ultimately, ulterior means needs to go ahead and be used. So now the question is, if you want to talk and you want to deliberate on the situation, just pay attention to the last year, all right? With the amount of people that, wanted to take bets on, betting that they can go ahead and try to force me into, shutting my mouth and force me into silence, how well has that worked? I mean, literally, the countering to your plan of trying to force me to shut the fuck up and trying to, you know, basically try to restrict my capability and capacity of being able to talk and weigh out the nuances, you know? Especially when ultimately during arbitration isn't the point of the discussion stage, to actually go ahead and try to find a potential median, you know? Try to find ways to mitigate worst case scenarios that would end up going ahead and having a devastating financial impact on, all parties involved. Not to mention that while still simultaneously having to look out for my best interest in the situation. Because understanding that aspect, if you want to go ahead and rely on, the whole breach of contract and deliberation on that, I mean, we can, you know. Ultimately, I've been here saying, I just want to talk. All right. Now, for people that wanted to take bets on, trying to intimidate me or, threaten me into silence. Now, my question is, so people were expecting me to be dead. So I've already passed over a year of the point where people were, pretty much counting on their wallets not getting hit because they thought that their problem with what they owed would end up disappearing if I was dead. But their attempt to kill me failed, while simultaneously not wanting to have to bring the situation to trial because ultimately not wanting to have to talk on the stand about the factor of somebody wanted to, accuse me of being at fault of the accident. Well, meantime, the person ended up going ahead and hitting me, going almost double the speed limit. All right. So we're talking they were going, 50 to 30. All right. So that's almost twice the legal speed limit. All right. While simultaneously wanting to try to deny culpability or try to force a out of court settlement, and trying to haggle me. It's like, no, listen, I'd much rather bring this to court so that way the person that went to go, run me off the road and attempts to roll cage my car down that Dollar General Hill, counting on it resulting in the car flipping and landing, roof up, which would cause the fluids in the engine bay to, you know, end up because of going upside down, and the way the combustion engines work, would have ended up going ahead and sending the entire front of the car into a flaming fireball while simultaneously having to try to get out of the car, with the doors being crushed closed, which if I didn't go ahead and stop, while they ended up going ahead and ramming me, by the time that I would have tried to speed through, they would have ended up clipping directly between, the passenger panel, as far as like the front seat and the back seat, completely T-boning me, going causing the bend in the metal to prevent from being able to get out through the driver's side. That's what would have happened had I not stopped with the speed that he was going. The impact on the actual vehicle ended up going ahead and showing the front damage, where they ended up diagonally going ahead and hitting, into the front passenger side, and the amount of impact as well as the angle ends up going ahead and showing, head on collision while simultaneously going ahead and showing, well, they had a, I believe it was a GMC Jimmy with a, a ram bar, Ultimately, the factor being in that Scion, the one thing that ended up being the saving grace that prevented the rolling and the car going on fire was the factor of how low of gravity that the actual car is. Because ultimately, when that Jimmy went to go ahead and hit head on, ultimately, where the bottom of the ram bar was, ended up being direct lined up with the same level, height wise, of the bottom of that ram bar being directly aligned with the front passenger headlight. So ultimately, that right there ends up going ahead and showing velocity difference, in the height, vehicle height, simultaneously with the other vehicle, while wanting to claim damage, not wanting to acknowledge the weight differential, as well as the impact, distribution from a little car, little Scion. All right. Technically, it would be considered a coupe, having to deal with the ferocity of a late 80s GMC Jimmy with a ram bar going ahead and going 50 miles per hour and smashing right in. All right. Think of the weight difference between the Scion and the GMC Jimmy. Go ahead and think about the height when it comes down to the light, of the passenger headlight lined up to the, truck's, ram bar. And ultimately the damage claim that they wanted to go ahead and try to claim when it comes to their vehicle. Well, meantime, that ram bar, despite the factor of being a precautionary measure, ended up going ahead and taking the impact, all right? While simultaneously wanting to claim their car was totaled and undrivable because of the factor that, keep in mind, late 80s Jimmys, the, actual bumper, the front bumper, it's made of metal, all right? That metal is bendable, all right? So wanting to claim that the car was totaled because that metal bumper ended up getting bent into the direction where the tip of the bumper ended up going ahead and just barely touching the rubber tread of the tire. All right. So to ultimately have your GMC Jimmy deemed totaled, all right, and undrivable, when literally with that situation, I kid you not, if there was anybody in the vicinity, just anyone in the general vicinity that would have had a caulk gun, I would have been able to, or anybody there would have been able to, go ahead and take the caulk gun without the bottle of caulk, go ahead and have it backwards, go and press the plunger in to go ahead and act as a little portable vice to go ahead and give the leverage to. Then, I don't know if you know how bending rhubarb ends up going, but think of metal bar, want to bend it, all right? Caulk gun, no caulk in it, all right? Turn it backwards. That actual press that ends up going and pressing the pressure to release the caulk out of the caulk gun ends up going ahead and acting as a portable device. You could also use it in replacement of a C-clamp in, an emergency situation, but understand it needs to be the most dire of emergencies to go ahead and rely on that one to give it enough pressure and push enough pressure to actually, be able to use it in this manner. But take the caulk gun, go ahead and put the pressure to act as a vise. You go ahead and you take the tip of the metal caulk as well as the handle from the caulk gun while the, bumper was gone and bent at that frame. And you'd literally be able to go ahead and take, holding the, with considering that it was the passenger side of the bumper. If you'd have gone and, had the hand at the right side of the caulk gun, that had the plunger pressed and just the right pressure, and then had the left hand going ahead to push pressure. All right. So we're talking literal push that would end up, for example, like a palm thrust. And simultaneously put the pressure to bend like that, it would have actually bent the metal bumper out of the position of the rubber tire tracks. And he would have been able to go ahead and drive his vehicle away from the scene of the accident that night. All right. And he would not even had to have gone to bring his vehicle to a body shop to go and fix the damages.